Hi, I'm Frank. I'm the Dungeon Master for the D20Misfits. So I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for about 16 years. Started off with Advanced D&D, so that's the second edition. That's when I learned it, and then I jumped to 3.5 2 years after, or a year after that. So altogether, yeah, about 16 years. As far as the D20 Misfits, I am the creator of them. So it's been about 7 years. We played a campaign before this one that we're currently in now. So altogether, since the startup, when we all said, hey, let's start filming, it's been about 7 years. So I believe that's the creation of the D20 Misfits. So how I create my characters. Well, from the get-go, my first character that I started off playing, and I've been playing, is my favorite. So, Paladin, I was a half-elf. It was a thing. It was all about the change. Making characters, I like to see what's new and play stuff I haven't played before and bring it more to life. Initially there, and then throughout our current campaign, I play the astral elf known as Sat, which you guys will learn more about who he is later on in the campaign. But he was new. It was when the new books came out. It was when it was a test play originally through D&D Beyond. So the lunar sorcerer from the God, now I'm gonna look like an idiot. Eberron, right? Maybe. Possibly. I have the book somewhere. I just don't know off the top of my head. God. Dragonlance. That's what it was. Dragonlance. Sorry. Wow. In the right system, at least. So Dragonlance is when Dragonlance came out with their book. So it was the Lunar Sorcerer. So that's new. Something I'd never really seen or played before. So I always try to play something new when I get a chance to play. When somebody does a one shot or when switch campaign or switch DMs, as we're doing this section on halfway through after we defeat Strahd and defeat Vampire, if they do, and we go over to the other side, which John or Viking will be the new DM, and I'll be playing as Sat from that point forward. But the creation, I like to pick something new and see what goes together. See what works together to what doesn't work, and then just go it out. I'm very meticulous or very tactile when it comes to it, when it comes to creation of it, because once I look at it and see what class I want to be, and then what subclass you want to be, then I base the story off of that, and it's just whatever comes to the top of my head of what this person is and the background of the character. I spend more time on the background than I do creating the class, so it all goes based off that background, and then I make it. So I'm gonna be an idiot. What's the other part of that question? So what inspires the character, or my thought process, I guess, is it's a lot to deal with Tolkien, with the Lord of the Rings series, the Hobbit series. I read The Hobbit years ago, so that just jump into that world. And then when when I started 3rd edition and I learned about Dritz and his story and read his book, and I just, that's who I wanted to be, was that underdog who became a champion. Um, so yeah, just like how Dritz was, Dritz inspires a lot of what I do and what I put behind him. Like as far as my characters, I want to be almost like that anti-hero, or the guy who comes from a very underdog life to where he means nothing to where he actually means something at the end. So that's between Dritz and Lord of the Rings, and just my fascination with medieval content. That just, I wanted to be in that world, so I make characters. That's what inspires me to make characters, because I want to be like that. I like, you like King Arthur and Merlin and the Knights of the Round. I played video games a lot when I was a kid, so playing Final Fantasy helped a lot too, which inspired me. Seeing all those classes, especially like the early Nintendo Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, seeing the fighter, the thief, the monk, the wizard, the black wizard, the red wizard, the blue wizard, the white, all of them, or the mage is what they were called. So, I mean, that inspired a lot because I wanted to always escape into those worlds. So that's my inspiration when I make my characters. So my favorite character that I've ever played, which will probably be the one that I played the longest, would be my paladin, Grievous. Some of the cast of D20Misfits, I think, if not most of them, know me playing that paladin because he was the villain in our campaign before we started filming. He's ultimately my favorite just because I put a lot of time, a lot of effort into him. Back in 3.5, which he was, I saw that back then you had the prestige books. So Dragon Disciple always caught my eye. So to do that, you have to know first level Divine and first level Arcane. So I had to multi-class. So thank for that DM for being really opened up to the idea of doing it and getting it done. So, because back then you couldn't cross out of a paladin or else losing everything. He's ultimately my favorite, but it's a tie because I did like my vampire sorcerer I played, because that was really fun to watch the characters interact with him as far as traveling. If they're traveling over a river, he had to be put in his coffin and had to be carried across, or he couldn't be around sunlight, so having somewhat of a makeshift umbrella or a canopy over him as he walked, that was always kind of fun to do, just to see what the party I was with was, how they were going to get me across, and then saving them in the end of getting captured. That was fun. A fort, me casting fireball to burn them all in there, and hopefully they get out. So yeah, I mean, ultimately Grievous is my favorite one out of all of them. Second would be the vampire I played many moons ago. So yeah, that'd be it. D&D is important to me just because it was an escape of reality. Being a teenager who was not into a lot of things, I did play sports, but other than that, it was just me and my brother, so there was a lot of things that when we had got into high school and stuff like that, we started having more friends, so D&D was in there, and it was just to make, and I see why now they do it, and they're starting to implicate it into colleges and stuff like that, because it is true. I mean, Dungeons & Dragons is a good stepping stone to help kids, especially the younger ones who are a little bit of the antisocial, or have some type of social disorders to where they don't talk as much to people, but to play a character, you become open with it. You become to open up more and talk more because you're playing through somebody else. You're not in theater, what they call it. In theater, it's that you're behind the screen talking. Or when that mask comes over, you're somebody different. So D&D definitely helps escape out of a hard day's work or anything else that, would hinder day-to-day life. It could be anything that is, very saddening or happy, and it's just a reset to play. When you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, it's a hard reset for you because you're playing a different character who has different ideals than you do, who has different beliefs, mannerisms, so to escape into that. And then when the session's over, or that day's over, and you go to sleep, wake back up, I mean, I'm me again. I'm not the character I played. So to help leave from reality is really, to me, I think it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to escape reality once in a blue moon, to immerse yourself into something you like doing. That way it helps you get away from what problems you face that day, or to come and have a clearer mindset of what to go in. D&D does help you keep your wits about you, being on your toes, because you never know what pitfalls you're going to run into, what dungeons, what traps you're going to go, the enemy, how they're going to be, how they're going to act, their tactics in combat. I mean, it's definitely learning all that and getting all that out. So it keeps your mind sharp. It keeps your imagination running wild. I mean, I like to create things, so hence why I like to refresh those thoughts by playing D&D and making a world where I can immerse players into it. I think that's why I like being the dungeon master, but sometimes it's cool to have a sit back and be the player for once. Just because I'm trying to make the players immerse into the world. So D&D is definitely important, and I'm glad that, some colleges are putting it in there as an elective. Some schools are using it. Elementary schools are using it as a side class to help the socially awkward kids come out of their shell. So it's a great thing. I mean, you have so many people to look up to about who do it, who just captivate you more, and once you get into D&D more, I mean, by then, when I started back then, I didn't know about Matt Mercer or Joe Manganiello. I didn't know about those two or any other actors and celebrities who have played Dungeons & Dragons who still do to this day. So just learning that as I go just wants me to be more captivated inside of it and doing it, because I don't want to be like them, but that's a good role model to look up to, because they all want to, how they play, how they do it, watching it on YouTube and seeing them go, watching Critical Role. Joe Manganiello is the ambassador for Wizards. So him coming to Children's Hospital and playing Dungeons & Dragons or playing games with the kids, I mean, that's a really cool thing to do. And, I mean, hopefully I would like to get on that and do the same thing, or at least help out in that way, shape, or form, so to help kids like that escape what they're going through and immerse them in a different world to where they don't have these problems anymore. And just to see that smile, I mean, I'm glad Joe does it. I'm glad that I can sit at home and watch it and still have that smile on my face knowing that I'm a part of it by playing Dungeons and Dragons. You know, the same thing with watching Critical Role and Matt Mercer play in Hindi and with all these guys. And just to see how they play and do that, it helps open up more creation on my part as a DM to follow in their footsteps as you work, because they're more so the pioneers of it. Along with the other creators. I mean, we wouldn't have Dungeons and Dragons if it wasn't for Gary Gygax and the whole other teams of doing this. So, yeah, it's a lot. It means a lot. I'm very important to be part of it, at least in a small stepping stone, a small pebble in a massive, massive field. That I'm still playing it because I like it that much. So, yeah, that's me. So the funniest moment that I've experienced playing D&D, I think, this predates the D20Misfits by far. I was playing as Grievous when we were starting out with my group of people, and we had a fighter who fought with a chain. His inspiration clearly was Simon Belmont from Castlevania. The other one was two friends that I met before playing. Weirdly enough, or I would say not weirdly enough, nerdy enough, dork enough, if you want to call it that, was playing laser tag with them. So the other guy was Orc Barbarian, and the other guy was a Ranger. And we were in the tree line of the start of the woods or the forest, or whatever you want to call it, fighting into a plain. And there's this one lonely tree stand behind, and the Ranger jumped up in the tree, and I had a flying mount at the time, Griffin, I believe, yeah. And I picked up the fighter with a chain and was going to drop him because of his ability that he had. Back in 3.5, it's called Whirlwind. So you drop him in the center, and he can attack once to each and every enemy within 5 feet of him. Having a chain whip was able to just... It's like it makes it funny because you relive back a moment in a movie you watched back in the 90s. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. When it started off, when they were in that mall, and Mikey had a yo-yo and was throwing it on the ground. He was walking a dog, stopped all the little foot soldiers from coming in anymore. And then he got them all to stop and goes, wait, and he did Around the World. And it's pretty much what our fighter did, was he did Around the World and literally whipped his chain around and whacked each and every one of them. And as he's fighting them and I'm taking the aerial combat of it, this barbarian picks up a tree and starts swinging, not knowing that the Ranger was inside trying to pop shots off with his bow while holding on to dear life. So that was a very funny moment because he had no idea. This orc had no idea that he was in there. He thought maybe he picked up a talking tree. He did not know that they were shouting at him. So it was a very funny moment back then. It was after that we just died laughing. We were trying to stay so into the combat and into the game. At the same time, we were breaking in between. We were silently laughing until the combat was over, and then we all laughed together. It was just so... It was funny that it worked. It was funny that it was silly because when you play it out, when you role play it out, you know, a lot of things are in mind. Back then, barbarians were illiterate and had trouble talking normally. With Tasha and with Tasha's Cauldron, it made it different. It made it more that they did know everything. They were just normal human beings, pretty much like everybody here, to where there was no such thing as illiterate things. or being illiterate. But to do that, not knowing that that one of his own companions was in there trying to shoot, and then had to switch to swords as he got close enough to get an extra swipe in, and him, I think he did fail the roll at the end and got launched and tumbled out of it. That we just all had a thing, just a laugh, just because it worked so well, but at the same time, it was the most dumbest idea we thought of at that time. So that has to be the funniest moment in my years of playing Dungeons and Dragons. There was another funny moment, and it didn't take. I honestly, I totally forgot about it until Marina said it. So, yeah, I'm getting you, editor. I got you in this. You're in it. She mentioned something, and we played right before we started the D20Misfits stuff. One of my brothers, Lance, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. He was a Dragonborn, and I remember this. There was one of us fumbled, and we ended up shooting him in the ass. And we were climbing up, I think, a mountainside or whatever. And he missed his roll and on climbing and ended up falling, and him being a Dragonborn with a tail took out everybody, and we all landed on the bottom. We all had to start that climb back up again. We had to make sure that he went last, just because we didn't want to happen that again, because I think it took us like if we would have did that again, we probably would have died, and it would have been a total party kill. So that knowing that now, and I remember her saying that, gee, that was, yeah, I definitely remember that. That was funny. So, Lance, sorry, but I'm definitely calling you out on that one. I do remember that was funny. Or the time that my brother played with us, and this one was better. He was a ranger with a bow, and he loved it. And my brother did one or two things. He critted or he fumbled. There was no in between this. So he crit, he hurt something. When he fumbled, we made sure that we pulled a fumble chart out. We found it on the internet that was just funny. So we pulled it off. He fumbled one time. He fumbled so much, he became a quadriplegic, which was trying to figure out how to make a wheelchair back in those days was kind of fun. Shot himself in the foot. Shot himself in the eye, which I'm trying to figure out how that works when you're doing it, unless it completely backfired and went into his... Yeah, he had one eye. Shot off half his ear. He was an elf, so half his ear was gone. He lost an eye. He stabbed himself in the foot. Shot himself in the throat. Yeah, he was the most... We're going to reference like a game real long back. Snake Eater. Metal Gear Solid. Pain. I believe is what it was. I think it was Pain. The old man who was the sniper. He slept 90% of the time, and you didn't know anything about it. But when he did, he made sure that when he shot, it was a kill shot no matter what. And everything else was just crazy. So that reminded me of that. So my brother, being an elf, a ranger, very good one, but also he hurt himself so bad. He did it all himself too. It wasn't like an enemy hit a critical strike on him. It was the fact that he rolled a natural one and fumbled, and we had to roll this chart out. And the chart, we had to keep on Xing it out because he kept on doing the same thing. So we just had to move up or down the tiers. And just to have that was, my gosh, I couldn't even tell you right now. He would probably be in an iron lung right now with some kind of robotic arm or a wooden arm back then, like they do like in Sekiro. That wooden arm that just shoots. So those three right there are just like the funniest moments in the world, and that went through the whole campaign. Slowly he digressed over and over and over again by getting shot by himself multiple times. So, yeah, that was funny. That was not one of the questions before. What? They're from the players. Son of. You're telling me that these next line of questions are all from what the players want to ask, not. If you guys have watched these episodes before, you know that these guys can come up with some really jacked up things. So, and I have no idea. I have not read these before. They just came through from, or from Marina's standpoint, from the editor's standpoint, that they all messaged her and went about this behind my back. So I have no idea what these next lines are going to entail. So sorry in advance. And when we play Tuesday, like tomorrow, I'm killing you, all of you. Just making sure that happens. Okay. So have I ever experienced a total party kill or a TPK? Yes. I was a player. It was the end game of that campaign that I was playing when I was the paladin, when I was playing Grievous. I think we were level 12, I think. No, sorry. I think we were higher than that. Because I had the ability to fly. So what it was is there was a Belor up on top of on a mountain range. So we were all up there. I took the aerial combat with my mount. Drop players off to get up there to fight them, and me staying back and focused on the healing aspect of it and trying to get everybody one time. This Belor hurt us all. I mean, he slowly was taking us down one by one, and every time, like when I got time to focus on everything, I was the last one standing, and I rushed in. I flew in, rushed in, and the damn DM rolled a nat 20 on the sword, and the sword, if you roll a nat 20, you behead. So I got beheaded, and we literally stood there in pause, like, what the hell happened? And it was just, we were just there. We were trying to figure out, like, how is there a way? Is there something? Like, are we literally all just dead right now? Is somebody faking death? And it wasn't until close to the end when the DM was about to say, hey, we're all dead and stuff like that, I double checked my character sheet and I had a parafit of wound closure. So I asked him, because of that nat 20 roll to where I'm beheaded, can I still be alive? Because I had the necklace of wound closure. And we rolled, and I was hanging on by a slither, and after one or two rounds of everybody finishing it off, or trying to, like, whoever was left at that point in time, doing something, I think by, like, the 5th round or some BS like that, I was able to reattach my head to my body, and I think we chipped it away enough to where we ended up defeating it. But at that moment, if I didn't double check, or if nobody, nudged me and goes, hey, I think you got something, it was literally the worst kind of defeat you would ever think of. Just to feel that we built all this up, made this great story together, going all through it, and ended up dying at the last big boss at the very end of the campaign. I mean, it's very similar to what we did prior to the Curse of Strahd campaign, the homebrew one we ran. The end boss, everybody submitted to it, so it was the difference, I guess, of unless you want to chalk it up to the same as a TPK, but everybody was still alive. So yeah, as a player, TPK suck. So I know as a DM, it kind of does hurt it, especially if you build up a storyline and backstories with all the players, all the characters, and you get to the final boss and die, or halfway through and die. So yeah, it sucks, but glad we were able to turn it around at the last second with that Necklace of Wound Closure to help everybody out. So yep. Favorite story I've ever DM'd? It would have to be the campaign before this one. Yeah, it would definitely be the one before this one, because it was a build up to post calamity. Or not post calamity, but it's when the Tides of Wild Mountain came out book. So we were playing that, and was after it was the Divine Gate, and how it turned out, I used the places in there in that book, just because I liked the campaign of Critical Roles. And when they came out with their own book of a module, we were playing that one, and started off in Chalk, got our way back to Exandria. We're playing that, and I think that story was really cool, because I had the players close to the end realize that they were demigods put in place to make sure the Divine Gate was locked, or stayed sealed, not by any type of mythical keys or spells of that nature, but their beings, their physical bodies were keys and locks, compared to when they met the other group. The other group was locks, the other group was keys. So if one killed the other, it would force it opened. So, and bring forth the gods that were trapped behind the Divine Gate, and the Betrayer gods trying to get out. So I think that story was really cool, because I spent a lot of time making their godlike weapons what they were before they got reset to not have this knowledge, to stay hidden. So a lot of fun with the players trying to get everything together and figure out what demigod they would fall under what god they currently are doing. So just playing around with them, asking with them, we developed a really good storyline. A lot of sadness, a lot of heartstring pulls, a lot of happiness at the end, to where it leaks into this campaign that we're playing now, Curse of Strahd, when the other side comes over and Viking takes over. There's going to be a character. There's two characters from that last campaign that are going to be present in this campaign that we're going to be playing, or the other half of the campaign. So definitely that story was really good. I like that one a lot. Would I let the druid turn into an owlbear like in the movie? A for one, that is a movie. They don't really follow the books, but then again, I haven't really seen the movie. We know that that's in the trailer. Yes, the druid does turn into that. That is highly unlikely because the druids, their wild shape lets them turn into a specific Seor. And I believe it has to be a beast, not a monstrosity, not a thing of that in the same signs. Like you can't turn in they can't wild shape into like a spectral beast. That's just impossible. I think it has to be a beast. That's why they can't do that. So would I ever allow it? No, because that would be overpowered to the party versus the enemies that are there. So no. If I was a player, what race and class would I prefer overall? The question was a little open-ended. So, honestly, I kind of have a preferred race, but it's always a toss-up based on the class. The class I prefer the most, by default, is Paladin. I've always liked the Paladin, always liked how they performed, and they are pretty much the overall. They're a tank and they're a secondary healer compared to their class. Short form of a fighter who is a tank, but Paladins can wear the heaviest armor, wield the biggest weapons. They're just they're secondary healers, but next to a cleric, but they fall in the between. So, as a preferred class, Paladin, preferred race, is a toss-up because it depends on what. I do like the Elven race, as far as just because it has the various sub-races to go with them, whether it be Drow, whether it be High Elf, Wood Elf, Aquatic Elf. So, I would say Elven race with Paladin, just because I went so long playing one there, or a Dragonborn Paladin. You can go either which way, but Paladin would be my preferred class. Race is always a toss-up. So my favorite character build from the players. See, that's always a toss-up too, because is it from this specific campaign or all campaigns? Whoever did this try to buy brownie points ain't gonna work. Just letting you know that now. But honestly, I think the coolest build that so far I've seen that has caught my eye and was like, wow, you can really get out of a sticky situation or aid somebody at in a tight spot. It would have to be the Paladin Fighter Echo Knight build that Steve has with Sibonec. The ability to bring forth an echo, and as a paladin, he could smite from literally both ends, from either the echo or from him, so he could fight two enemies at once. Honestly, by default, that build is cool. Okay, so whoever thought of this question from the players, I'm coming after you once I find out who you are. I'm just letting you know that now. You thought I had an ego balloon. Gee, at Christmas, you're just trying to pick favorites right now. I don't have a preferred player. I don't. Everybody is pretty much well balanced, because if you think about it in this retrospect, half of the current cast is new. We're all new to 5th, but the people coming in from D&D or haven't played D&D in a very long time, it's about 50-50 down the middle. So, as far as a preferred player, I don't have one, honestly. And if I did, it wouldn't be anybody from this campaign. I tell you that now. So any advice I would have for the players would be, and I think most people will know this, just there is to be well versed in what their characters can do. And it's every D&D player. Every D&D player always double checks what their character can do, what to look forward to. Knowing the class, knowing the race, knowing, if they have dark vision or not, whether, the class. I've been talking about Paladin this whole time, so Paladin is the one I know the most. So to know that they have Smite, to know they gain an extra attack, to know that they get spells onto it. Is that, most of the time, and I think this goes for every DM, you always have that one or two people who try to make a class that doesn't technically exist within the game, but now there's so many classes that it kind of stops that ability to make a completely out of the box class. So my advice to players is to know your characters without having to look at a sheet, without having to look to a website like D&D Beyond, or to look at the character sheets. If they have paper versions of it, I think just by default, if you know the abilities of your class and know vaguely your weapons and your abilities, then you shouldn't have, that can pause a game, or that could stop the momentum of the game if you're in combat fighting a certain thing. And that's for anything. That I'm just saying that towards like a paladin, but like to a player, you got to think about it this way. 5th edition allows you to do so much more stuff because it combines 4th and 3.5. So, like short rest or long rest, mainly all spellcasters can change their spells around depending on the situation that they're in. So if they know they're going to go into battle, they should pick more combative spells versus, a cleric who could know the same scenario. If they know a battle's approaching, they could focus on protection and healing spells more so than anything, and let the wizards and sorcerers and warlocks deal with the combatant spells, while the cleric and paladin focus on either heals or vice versa, or depending on how you do it. Depending on what kind of style you are. I think that's the big one, is knowing what kind of a style player are you. There's just, you have the people, to me, there are 3 different types of styles. You have players who are more focused into the combative side of things that are not really into, say, role-playing. Whereas there are people who are more into the role-playing and puzzles and the wits of the game. And then you have the third who are, whatever goes. They're cool to do both. They don't really have a side, but then again, they're not opposed or against it either way, but at the same time they are. That's, to me, those are 3 types of players. So I think is to know what kind of style player you are. And I think a lot of people don't know it off the top of their head, or couldn't tell you, because they don't know if they prefer, the combative side of things, or versus, the storytelling point of it, to make sure the story progresses or adds on to it, because we all collectively together, the DM and the players, make the story. The DM just narrates it Okay, hey, you're going there. Okay, well, this is what happens when you go there. You know, it's pretty much the players do make the story, and the DM just kind of organizes it and goes along and throws in a quest or two there. I mean, that's pretty much like the DM's perspective on how to do it, but also to make it interesting, to make it fun. To have all the things is why having a sixth sense and playing with friends who you know, you can kind of read what type of player they are to know, you know, to kind of combine those elements together for the session at hand. Sometimes it doesn't always go that way, but that's the way the story plays out. I mean, can't do it that way. As far as characters, I think finding out what you are, and I mean that I know it's very vague how I said it, but to clarify it, it would be more of what do you want your character to become at the end is pretty much what it is, and then what can we do to lead up to that point in their story. If people don't really have that end part down and don't really know what they want to turn their character into, or how they want to be by the end of the campaign, I mean, kind of me as a DM, I kind of tempt them on different paths to go, okay, you could be this way, you can go that way, just by how the story is. You know, you end up being the villain at the end, or you're going to end up being the hero, or are you going to be the coward that runs away? So, player-wise, know your class, know your features, know your race of what they can and cannot do. If you're a spellcaster, be adverse in the spells you have. The ones you cast constantly, you should know what they are. You should know how they operate, know how they work. Because you don't want to impede the story or the combat momentum. You don't want to stop the momentum, period, because it could be really cool and leading up to a very good, you know, dropping point or a plot twist or, you know, something of that kind of, or a hook of some type. You know, that is a big thing to stop it, because then you kind of kill the emotion, the suspense building up to it. So yeah, as long as you're still adverse in your character and class as far as a player, being a new player, I know it's going to be a little challenging because there's just so much things that are on that character sheet alone, no matter if you look at it digitally or on paper. There's so many things all over the place. But to pretty much to know, like, okay, if you're that class, if you're a paladin, you should know how many smites you get. You should know your ability of laying on hands, what it can do, what your pool look like, and maybe like the next 2 levels, so you know what to go into. So if you know, like, to 5th edition, every 4 levels, you get an ability increase or a feat. For, let's say, okay, for the class of paladin. So if I know that we're 7th level about to jump into 8, well, are my stats cool? Or do I want to dip into a feat to wield a different weapon, to gain something else that might benefit me? Maybe this paladin here is not so much a paladin that fights the evil. Maybe he is a witch hunter, so he wants to have warcaster. Or mage slayer, which if a mage casts a spell beside you within 5 feet, you get an attack of opportunity on them. I mean, those are the things you want to look at. So that would be my advice to the players and characters. House rules. See, that is that can be a very touchy subject, and I don't want the viewers, I don't want you guys, I don't want people to think less or greater towards me, if that makes sense, because each DM has their preference of house rules. You know, there are a lot of instances that, you know, some players or some DMs do versus what others do. But, I mean, if you're talking about, like, in-game house rules, like a potion, drinking a health potion is a bonus action. Talking is... It can go different ways depending on what you say to kind of cut players off. If they want to do like a whole monologue in the middle of a battle, that's going to be their turn, flat out. If they're just yelling to try to trying to get in position for like a tactical maneuver, then that I would say like is a bonus action. It's very few and far in between. I mean, most DMs do the rule of cool. I think it's like a standard set for all DMs, or the one that's like in the gray, because if the DM thinks it's cool, then gonna allow it to happen. But as far as like house rules, I don't really have a lot. I mean, I do the bonus action and talking, and that's pretty much it. And then I just follow the normal rules and standards of there. I mean, I can't say like, hey, at my table, I don't want no. You know, I can't, you know what, I can't even say that, because I don't want to be like the strict DM that doesn't do it, but I do. I mean, if you want to go just basic house rules that I have, I go top 3, it would literally be the potion, the talking, and then the focusing on the game itself. Be a part of the game. Don't be in and out of the game if you see fit. You know, if you're on your phone because some friend texted you on there and it's your turn and you're doing that overall, if you're that social butterfly who has to talk to everybody, or, you know, it's the ones on your turn and you're picking up your phone and you're doing one of these numbers to where you're just watching a clip of YouTube or whatever, and then it's your turn, you're like, what? Pay attention to the game. That's one of my biggest, I guess, pet peeves for it, is to be immersed in the game when the game is on. So, as far as house rules and what they are, those are my preferences. Whether or not they're house rules of mine is a touch and go base. So, every DM has their own set. So, I think those are mine, and then it's always subject to change. Just like I think every DM would vouch for that. Every house rule is subject to change, probably not if you have players that use and abuse it. So, that would be mine. So, the question, are we making good decisions or foolish ones? Technically, see, if I answer that and say you're making the right decisions, you're like, oh, okay, cool, we can do this. But that's not always the case. There are consequences to actions, and I believe I stressed to this campaign and these group of players enough. Someone was part of the last campaign. Their actions had consequences. The same thing, they kind of screwed that one up in the Curse of Strahd when they knew of an imminent threat, which was, you know, not going to the Wizard of Wine directly. That let's go to Krezk first, to where there was no immediate threat. There was these druids of a blood circle that were trying to create this monstrosity of a walking, moving tree that could demolish everything it seemed. If you guys play Curse of Strahd, it's Winter Splinter. So in our campaign, the group didn't go to it right away, and Winter Splinter walked off towards one of the biggest towns or cities in Barovia and laid waste to half of it. So I had to roll to see who survived and who didn't, as far as, who fought and who turned tail and ran. So each consequence has actions to where, it's a law of physics, law of motion. An object in force stays in force until an opposing force stops it, or it comes into the center of it. Are you guys making good decisions? Sometimes you do. Sometimes you make foolish ones. It's just how... It's my job to go, if you make the wrong ones, how does that affect the story and the end game? We're talking about that one. We're talking about the Winter Splinter one. The most recent one, and I think was foolish, but at the same time, it wasn't. It fell into like the gray category. It fell in the in-between. Was when you guys were in the temple, and Nevera portaled everybody out because it was a golem. And then nobody's like, you guys could have stayed there and went, and you probably would have saved the children in that case, instead of them having all died by leaving. And let's go and let's walk this sword. We got the relic, we got what we came for. Let's not tempt the dark gods of giving us a power or anything. Let's hurry up and dip back in it. We can go back. The module and the side modules that are going against it, because I think I've said this before not later questions, but I think in the campaign itself, is I'm running Curse of Strahd 3 different ways. I'm running the original Curse of Strahd from the normal collector's edition, the one in the tombstone, so there's that one. I'm also running 2 third-party ones, and just a shout-out to them, Beetle and Grimm. I'm running their legendary Curse of Strahd one, which has different things in it that could have made the story better, could have made it worse. And then the ones to fill in the gaps of the other ones, I was using Lunch Break Heroes, and using his rendition of a revamped Curse of Strahd. And I'm combining them all together as I see how I see it, how I want to see it. I combine all 3 of them into this bigger version of it. That way when I go there are some places in the modules, and you guys know this if you played it, there are certain locations within that campaign that are dead spots. I don't really have a quest to go on. Beetle and Grimm added some into it, and so did Lunch Break Heroes. So they added that in so if the party ever wanted to go there because they were curious, we can throw in a side quest, and in turn that could help them or hurt them in the process. I think the party is about half and half since we started this campaign, of making foolish decisions to making good ones. I will put it that way. What person in their right mind would set a windmill ablaze knowing that there's children inside? Foolish plays. You guys literally killed children. Good job. At the same time, you guys also helped free the children in a later standpoint as a redemption shot. The portaling, the choice to go there and there, it's how the party sees it. The party sees it and I adapt to it, just like how everybody else has said. I think Arian said it, the thing that you guys my players throw me curveballs, and I am really good at adapting to that to reverse it back at them, or later down the line have karma kick their butts back at it because they made the wrong decision versus the right decision. But it can go either way. There is no good or foolish one, but then again, there are. You guys gotta be, to me, as a quick, like, advice standpoint, is get together and plan it. Not wait till the time comes, but sometimes stuff happen on the whim that are really good. So, it's about 50-50. So, decisions that they have made that has surprised me. Off the top of my head, if you go most current ones, the deal that Navera made with Robin. Puck, the trickster, to portal out there in exchange to I will be your friend forever and visit you constantly. That surprised me. Other ones would be, I think the other one would be Noella when she said yes to Strahd about drinking the blood and starting to turn into a vampire or trying to fight that off. That was a surprise because as a cleric, you wouldn't do that. But in order to save somebody, I can see why she did it. So I think that was another surprise. I stated later, and I stated just in the last question, with the windmill, setting it ablaze while people were inside of it. I mean, that was a surprise to go, what the hell? Or let's knock out a kid before he he snitches on us, by using the go to sleep method. And then saying, yelling back in broad daylight back to a inn that doubles as a secret base, going, "Sanctuary, I fucked up." I mean, that was a surprise. So there has been multiple surprises. As far as, like the ones that I remember the most, those are the ones so far. I mean, there probably are. I'm just not thinking of them right now, and it's weird. But those are the main surprise ones that I seen that literally made me go, what the fuck? And surprised, like, holy shit, that was cool. And that was cool. Another one. A recent one in the same concept of Navera's was the combo between Navera and Yerick by portaling him to the Draco Lich of Argynvost that I placed in there, and that was from Lunch Break Heroes. So maybe turning Argynvost into a Draco Lich to have him guard the temple. I thought that was a really cool idea, so I used it, and Yerick thought it would be a brilliant idea to cripple a dragon. It was a half-good idea. The portal was cool to get onto the dragon's back, and then striking it very hard in multiple times in the same spot to try to clip off a wing to try to get it to stay grounded. That was a brilliant idea. Where the location was not a brilliant idea, because it was on a bridge that was old, that has been damaged. It's made out of stone, so it's still sturdy, but in some places it is broken just because of weather and time. And having a skeletal dragon, the bones who weigh enough to jump on the bridge. I'm surprised the bridge didn't collapse on this, but I wanted them to get to the temple. So, and him literally, and I think I spent I spent like a week on it, on that fall, trying to figure out the rule of fall damage. And it wasn't until I found online that we that there is a rule of fall damage, which is in Fizban's Dragon Treasury, which is you take X amount of D6s. If you survive it, you survive it. If you don't, you don't. That's the rule that I ended up using, and he survived it. But he had like maybe like almost like out of 100, he had like maybe 10, 12 left hit points. So like I said, that was a big one that surprised me, that you guys actually did it, but you didn't think it all the way through. So, like I said, it was a surprise to me. But so far, those are the ones that I can think of the most as of this time. So, my favorite D&D creature. I've always liked it. I mean, this is a pretty easy one for me. I always liked it. I've liked it since I started playing D&D, I believe, in Advanced with it, just because it was so crazy seeing it. And I thought to myself, man, this is the instance, I would say that this is the instance to where me and Eivor get on the same wavelength, because I think a creature is cool and I want to tame it. Just like he is, I would say, a little bit obsessed with an owlbear. I am obsessed, and I haven't used it in this campaign because there's no need for it. But I have always been fascinated. This is way before the movie. I've always been fascinated with a Displacer Beast. I think those things are cool, and they're one of the iconic monsters within D&D, next to the Mimic, next to a Beholder, next to a Dragon, and a Lich. I mean, to me, I've always liked the Displacer Beast, to see this massive, not massive, it is considered a large beast, but to have this 8-foot-long panther with these tentacles on the shoulder blades that is used to pretty much have a magical effect inside of them that's not a magical effect, but be able to make a copy of itself, to where there's always a 50-50 shot if you actually hit the creature or not. I always found it the most challenging when we fought a Displacer Beast, or multiple ones, because it's a 50-50 shot whether or not you hit it. So I've always liked them. I think when I was playing 3.5 and I started DMing, that was the main creature I think I used a lot, and I think all the players back then knew it, that by default a Displacer Beast is my favorite monster within D&D. My favorite adventure book, or the adventure module that I have played, or I have DM'd, or I have played it. I believe, to me, I think the one I like the most, and the one I would say intrigues me the most, is the Tides of Wildemount. It's Cholt. To me, Cholt itself is just the Indiana Jones. You know, you're finding this temple in the jungle. His temple is filled with traps and enemies. I mean, hell, there's dinosaurs on this island. You're combining Jurassic Park meets, Indiana Jones. It is crazy. Even with a little bit of adding the jungle-esque of like Jumanji and stuff like that, to where there are so much things there. Cholt itself is just the most intriguing part to me. Is the fact that all of that, mostly all my favorite movies that I did growing up, are on this one island. I mean, hell, even, you know, you can go as far as, you know, like Lord of the Rings and, you know, the Dwarven cities, you know, going to Helm's Deep, going into Moria, to Helm's Deep again. I mean, all this stuff is literally, it's just, it's all together on one island. And to have the King of Feathers there, a massive, a T-Rex that has feathers on it, that can pretty much misty step when it wants to. It's weird. It's cool. It's exciting. I mean, Chult itself is just crazy, and I like it. So I think my favorite adventure would be the Tides of Wildemount, or the is it? Yeah, Tides of Wildemount, which is Chult. I believe so. Don't hold me to it. Do not hold me to it. I mean, I can look at the book. It's literally right. It's literally. I'm staring at it. I just can't see it from there. It's. I mean, it's literally right there. But I want to say it's that one. It's Chult. That's the one I like the most. Tomb of Annihilation. There we go. That's the book. Tomb of Annihilation. That is my favorite adventure. So, memorable moment in all of my years playing. Well, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, you can go as far as like most memorable saying that I have seen throughout my years of playing as being a DM and DMing with players. A laugh followed by "I'm about to do something stupid." That is the most memorable saying. Memorable action that I can think of. I mean, I'm not. If you're trying to send me clues, I'm not getting what you're trying to want me to say. But I mean, memorable actions. I mean, the portal going to the dragon, and in the end, Yerrick falling to his doom, which set a lot of things in motion. That was a very memorable thing. I mean, the saying is very memorable in the years that I played with different players. That was a line that they usually said something, and it was a risky maneuver to do something stupid, and then it either really helped them or it just put them further in a ditch. I mean, action-wise, I like that one. I mean, my most memorable one is the years ago when our Orc Barbarian picked up a tree with a ranger in it and used it as a weapon with the ranger in it, and him trying to take his turn and attack things while also trying to hold on. And to have them hold on and still shoot an arrow, I think, to me, that reminded me directly of Legolas, so it became a very memorable moment for me of that. I mean, memorable, actions, my brother either rolling a fumble or a crit and really screwing up his ranger. But he became a dead shot at the same time. I mean, those were like the most memorable that I've known. That if you weren't a part of that game playing it, you would not believe it. But if my brother was here with me, sitting right next to me, he would confirm all of that stuff was true. By default, I will set money onto it. If you ever need to ask that question, tell me. Call BS on my story, and I will call up my brother with you on that line, and he will confirm the whole damn thing. I got another friend who was, I think, the DM at that point in time. I think it was Justin telling you he was the DM when my brother really screwed himself up. So the fact that he survived it, I think Justin is aware of that situation and knows about it. My buddy Nate, he was the ranger attached to the tree that the barbarian did, and the barbarian in that question was my friend Matt. If she's watching it, I know you remember that because that was funny. I still remember it to that day. Remember that whole battle. That one, my brother. I mean, the dragon. So there's been a lot of memorable ones, but those are the ones that stick out the most. I mean, the one thing that I would want to, I mean, again, I mean, there's a lot of them that I want to like relive or rewatch. Is pretty much my memorable moments that I've seen. I mean, if I had to choose like one overall, I mean, I did like that whole campaign to begin with, because like the whole thing was us checking out these ruins, that the way the town was built, it was built in a language that was a spell if you casted it. That you could cast it, and I think that was the first time that our DM implemented time travel, to where we were jumping points in time, to a degree. There are alternate universes, kind of like Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness type ordeal. Just the fact of going back in time within that era. But if I could pick like a particular thing to rewatch, I would love to rewatch the whole last campaign we did, just because it had everything in it. It had the action, it had the romance, it had the what the fuck moment, it had the awe moment, the heartstrings, the made the players pissed off at the evilness. To have the evil guy show his face in a very climactic movie cinema way. To go into stuff to make the players go, what? To make them question their decisions. I mean, that whole last campaign, I wish we started the D20Misfits during that time, because that campaign was ridiculous. It was so good, and it was homebrewed mostly. I just used the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and I used the Tomb of Annihilation. I combined both of them into one massive world, because I liked the world. We cross paths with certain things that is in the book, mainly like the important landmarks, but I added my own twist on certain ones. So that whole campaign I would like to rewatch. Yeah, it was a good one. The ending really surprised, and I like it that halfway through, when we switch over to John's, at the end of John's, I'm taking it back over, because the last part of it is this group going into that world. To me, it's me giving the players a redemption shot, and possibly ending a story of a lifelong character I've always played. So I hope you guys liked the questions. I mean, the answers that I had in watching this a little bit. To me, those are really cool coming from the players. The last part of them, the last 14 questions, coming from the actual players part of the campaign. That's really cool. I'm glad I got to answer some of those ones. Mostly all of them. Some of them were kind of one-sided, but I mean, I do. I like it. This is why I like Dungeons and Dragons. This is why I like the group I'm in. This is why I like DMing for them. There's just so much coming in, to like. This is like next year is going to be my giddy moment. It's going to be where the dorkness really shows. I mean, a nod to Dead Gentlemen. The Darkness is Rising next year. Next year's D&D's 50th anniversary. 1974 to 2024, 50 years. That D&D has been created, been on the market 50 years. It is half the lifespan of Disney. So, D&D, this is why I like it. There's so much new things that are going to happen next year. So many new books that are starting to come out with. If you guys haven't seen it, check out the Dungeons & Dragons Showcase of 2023. A lot of cool information on there. Joe Manganiello is making a documentary for Wizards, which is really cool because he is like one of the biggest ambassadors for Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons. So it's really cool. Being in a suburb of the city he's from is really cool. He lived in Pittsburgh, and I'm only less than an hour away from Pittsburgh, so that's really cool. They're making a book based on a villain from the 80s cartoon. They're actually giving him a story, which is really cool, or the events after or before. So for them to have a book about Venger from the cartoon, I think that would be really cool. Hopefully we might see the characters in there. Hank, Bobby, Donna, Dana. I mean, all those guys. I mean, Presto. I mean, they're all amazing. I mean, I love that cartoon. So, just see them coming out with a book based on the villain, the documentary that Joe Manganiello is doing. That's really cool. This is why I like D&D. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys see it. I hope you guys realize like where I'm coming from and how big the D&D world has impacted me. So, I mean, thanks for watching. I know I kind of ramble on a lot. Our editor in the background is like, yeah. Kind of tell me to do this number. So, yeah. I mean, I love D&D. I love the players that I'm with. They're all my brothers and sisters to this. I mean, the D&D community is finally getting its, it's becoming more and more into the spotlight, and that's why I like it. It really boomed when COVID happened, and now it's just striving because now they got their movies out. I mean, not to knock on the older movies that were already out, and like the B-roll movies, but I mean, some of them were really, really good. Some of them were very entertaining, and to see them actually having a badass cast list in Dungeons & Dragons Honors Among Things, which we're going to see not tomorrow, but next week, the 25th. Tune in for Facebook or TikTok, Instagram, all the above, YouTube even, because we will be filming the trip going down there and getting to the theater, and then when we're leaving. So I hope that you guys like that content and want to see it. It really helps us out. Again, too, if you guys see this on Facebook and stuff like that, I know we have a lot more followers on Facebook than we do as subscribers on YouTube. I would like to balance that out, so those who are following us on Facebook, please go over to YouTube and subscribe for us. I mean, jump those numbers up. I mean, it does help benefit us. I just like to see that like our content's being viewed, and if it's something we need to improve on, I mean, that's why we ask for comments and feedback, just because we want to know. So I believe that's the rest of it before I talk you guys to sleep, or vice versa. I mean, I can go on and on, but thank you guys for watching. I'm Frank, D20Misfits, Dungeon Master, creator, founder of it, playing with a badass crew myself. I wouldn't change them. I wouldn't ask anything more or less of them. I mean, they keep me on my toes. I do appreciate that. So from the bottom of my heart, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in to all the followers. Hey, just push it on. Share it around. Hit that like button. Subscribe on our YouTube page. Like I said, this all helps us benefit. We have some secrets in store. One we just unleashed of a new, I wouldn't say sponsor, but we are ambassadors to a newer company that you're going to see later on in the future, probably about next time we play, not Tuesday as in the 18th, but not the 25th. So going into May, you guys will see it because I will have the apparel for them. So check that out, and then, like I always do, from us, the D20 Misfits, good night.